What's up, guys? We are back once again answering and analyzing biology questions that could be in your IMAT. Now, I separated and organized 10 different questions from different topics for us to analyze them and try to extract the most as we can. So stick with me until the end. If you're interested in this topic, don't forget to leave it a like. It's gonna help me a lot, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Don't want to miss anything. I'll be posting a lot of videos about questions because at this point that we are right now, questions will be the answer for your results. So let's move on. Alright guys, so let's jump straight to our first question for this video. Which of the following statements about the kidney are correct? Guys, I just wanted to mention very briefly that this is a question about anatomy and physiology, well, if you may. And the IMAT, they have a solid history of asking questions of systems in general. Now, it's true that the last 2 years they had a little break, but that doesn't mean that it disappeared at all. Okay, last year, for example, we had a question of muscular system, which makes me think that this next year we are probably going to see a different system. Okay, they're probably going to choose a different scope of system, and I believe that the kidneys or the renal system is a very strong candidate. Okay, let's take a look at the options here and then we can continue talking. The kidney filter the blood and remove waste product from the body. Correct. I hope it's doing that. That is what it's supposed to do. Okay, remove waste and filter our blood. Second statement, the kidney are involved in the digestion of food. Okay, so digestion system, it's a completely different system, has nothing to do with the kidney. Now remember, when answering IMAT questions, focus on what is asking. What does it want from you, okay? If you start thinking about other things, yeah, but the digestion system has some correlation with kidneys because it's gonna, absorb the nutrients that it's gonna be breaking down and then it's gonna be filtered. No, that's you're leading yourself to a mistake. So focus on kidney. Digestion of food has nothing to do with it. Let's move on. Third statement. In a healthy individual, the kidneys produce urine that contains high levels of glucose. My God, if that's happened to you, congratulations, you have diabetes. Nope, that's not supposed to happen in a healthy individual. So the only correct option here is letter A, statement number 1. Okay, now last thing before we move on, I just want to give you this heads up. When talking about the kidney, the renal system, it's important for you to have these 3 things in mind. Okay, so you can answer any type of questions about kidney. First of them is understanding exactly what does it do in your body. Okay, so the main role, the function, and everything. Basically, this question was all about this. Second thing to do is when talking about kidney, it's very common to correlate this system to another system that is the hormonal system, okay, the endocrine system. So why? There's a very important molecule that is produced in our epiphysis that is the vasopressin or the ADH hormone. Okay, you probably heard about it. It's the antidiuretic hormone, so it helps to regulate the water in our system. So whenever it's produced, our kidney says, okay, it's time to increase the absorption of water. So there are certain drugs like alcohol, for example, that whenever you're drinking alcohol, it is going to lower the production of ADH, and that's why a guy that is drunk is always going to the bathroom. Why? He doesn't have enough vasopressin in his system. He doesn't have enough ADH in his system. So the kidney just let the water go freely without any control. Okay? So having these in mind is important. And the third thing for the most demanding questions is understanding about the nephron. Okay? That unit, the main unit of function of the kidney. So understanding a little bit about the sections, the main sections, the correlation with the blood vessels and things like that. I don't think it's much of a IMAT style to ask about the nephron, but it could, and it has already actually asked. So it's always good to have this in mind. Okay, with that done, let's move on to our second question. Question number 2. Which of the following are true of the cytoplasm? Okay, 1, the vast majority of the cytoplasm is made up of water. True. You grew up hearing that we are 70% of water. We are, so drink your water. It's true. It's no difference when talking about cells. Second statement. All content of animal cells are contained in the cytoplasm. Is that correct? Well, let's think about it. Now he just narrowed down our options. He started talking about cytoplasm. Once again, keep your eyes in the question and try to figure out what does he want. He didn't specify. It could have been bacteria or animal cells. But the second one is already narrowing down. Remember, animal cells and plant cells and every other eukaryote cells, we're going to have compartments, all right? Like the nucleus, for example. What does the nucleus has? DNA. And is it part of the cytoplasm? No. Oh yeah, but the nucleus is inside of the... No, these compartments, they're there for a reason, okay? To separate things. So think about it. Whenever you're talking about transcription, translation, we always separate what happens in the cytoplasm. Which one of the two of them happens? Answer quick. The translation happens in the cytoplasm, and the transcription happens in the nucleus. When talking about cell respiration, for example, we always separate the process that happens in the cytoplasm and the process that happens inside of the mitochondria. So the glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm, and the other process, Krebs cycle, phosphorylation chain, all of these happens inside of the mitochondria. So no, not all contents of animal cells are contained in the cytoplasm, okay? So, nope. Third one here. The cytoplasm contains electrolytes and proteins. Perfect, that's it. There's electrolytes. There's always sodium and potassium being transported in and outside of the cell. There's a lot of proteins. We have the cytoskeleton inside of the cell. So, that leaves us with letter E, 1 and 3. Ooh, what a surprise. It was the only one that was bold here. Anyway. Moving on, third question. All right, so question number 3, the pH of the venous blood is 7.35. Which of the following is the likely pH of arterial blood? Oh my God, I'm gonna have to memorize the pH of different structures. I already have so many things to memorize. Whoa, okay, let's slow down. Obviously, you won't have to memorize the pH of different structures. The IMAT knows biology can be very complex and full of details. So once again, let's just stick with what it's asking you. What is the main information that you have to extract from it? Well, it's giving you an information here. The venous blood is 7.35. So remember, what is the venous blood? So the venous will have these vessels that will be leaving our tissues straight into our heart. Well, and if it's leaving our tissue, it's going to be rich with oxygen? No, with CO2, right? CO2, that is the metabolite of the cell respiration. And remember, the CO2 can interact with water and can create a weak acid, all right? In comparison with the pH of the arterial blood, what is the likely pH? Well, it's leaving the heart full of oxygen going towards the tissues. So of course, it's gonna have a pH that is more basic or more alkaline than the venous blood. And what is the only option that gives us this? Letter E, 7.4. It can only be that one. You see where I'm coming from? So sometimes it's very worth it to take a deep breath and analyze it and see all the information you can extract and truly try to understand what does it want from you. Another thing that can help is take a look at the options. Like this was the only one that had a pH that was above 7.35. All the other ones were below that, so that can give you a hint. All right, guys, so question number 4, very interesting as well. A lot of things we can talk about, and as you can imagine, we're going to be talking about adrenaline right here, present in every single one of the options. Now, before we move on and try to identify which statement is correct, let's just do a brainstorm, refresh our minds about the adrenaline. So we were talking about the kidney just now, and straight up in the kidney, we're gonna have important gland that's called adrenal, sitting there just like a hat on top of the kidney. So the adrenal is gonna be producing adrenaline, so it makes sense. So this hormone is very important in its release every time we are going through a stress situation where we need to make a decision quickly and where we're gonna have to fight or flight. So this fight or flight response is very associated to adrenaline. So every time you come across this hormone, think about it. Okay, it's gonna help you to answer these questions. So let's take a look at the options here. Adrenaline can sometimes decrease heart rate. Does that make sense? Absolutely not. We need a lot of nutrients and oxygen going on in our body. So our heart is gonna be having to pump as quick and as strong as it can in order to allow this to happen. Letter B, adrenaline is rarely released during fight or flight responses. So we went over this already. So letter B, no. Letter C, adrenaline causes peripheral vasoconstriction. So this is a very interesting one. Let's just hold on in this one and leave it for last, okay? Letter D, adrenaline only affects the cardiovascular system. Now this is the interesting thing about the adrenaline. Depending on where is it landing in our body, depending the organ that is binding to, it is going to create a different response. So it does not only has to do with the cardiovascular system. It can be binding to our lungs, it can be binding to our muscles, and so on. So letter D is not correct. Letter E, adrenaline travels primarily in the lymphatic vessels. Now let's remember about the lymphatic vessels. So very beside our blood vessels, we're going to have parallel these lymphatic vessels that they're going to be responsible for our defense responses. Okay, so if we're going through an infection or something like this, these lymphatic vessels will be transferring white blood cells in order to protect us. So it has nothing to do with adrenaline. We can already cross this out, and let's go back to letter C. Now, by elimination, you already know that letter C is the correct one. But the adrenaline causes peripheral vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction has to do with narrowing down the radius of our vessels, which means that the blood will have more difficulty to go through there. Now, we were just saying that we need a lot of oxygen and nutrients going in our body. Why would we need to vasoconstrict our blood vessels? The key word here is peripheral. Okay, so we're not talking about all blood vessels. We're talking about the ones that are on our skin, the ones that are in our intestine, because we don't want to be breaking down nutrients. We don't want to be going through digestion in situations where we have to fight or flight. So in order to prevent these things, we are going to have vasoconstriction in these areas, and adrenaline will be causing this response. Now, remember that I mentioned that depending where is it binding to, it will create a different response. The same adrenaline, if it's binding to some receptors that we have in our lungs, it's going to increase the size of our bronchioles and also going to increase the size of other blood vessels that we have in our muscles, because it's right there that we need blood. So right there that we need oxygen and nutrients. Now, after talking about this, we can already leave with peace of mind, knowing that the letter C is correct and knowing exactly why is it correct. Alright guys, so moving on to question number 6. Which of the following statements about the cell membrane is correct? Okay, so cell membrane. Letter A. It's made up of a phospholipid bilayer which only allows active transport across it. Okay, is that correct? Well, it's made up of a phospholipid bilayer. Perfect. That is absolutely correct. But which only allows active transport across it. Well, is that the only way of getting things out inside of the cell? Active transportation? Well, let's just remember active, it's because it requires ATP. Yeah, that's one way of having things across the membrane, but that's not the only one. Water, for example, there are particular transports in the cell membrane called aquaporine. They're responsible for allowing water to come in and outside of the membrane, and it does not require a single ATP for that to happen. It can freely do that. So that's called a passive transportation. So letter A is not correct. Letter B, it is not found in bacteria. Of course it is. Well, the cell membrane is the main delimitation of every single cell, so it is important for the cell to have it, and obviously bacterials will have as well. Letter C, it is a semi-permeable barrier to ions and organic molecules. Okay, now we are talking. Letter D is consists purely of enzymes. Nope, as we just saw right now, the cell membrane mainly is phospholipids, but we can also find enzyme, you can also find some glucose, we can also find some cholesterol. So it's not only enzymes. And letter E, it has an overall negative charge. Well, the cell itself usually tend to have overall negative charge, but that's the inside of the cell when compared with the outside. But the membrane itself does not have an overall negative charge. Okay, when talking about the very inner side, it's mostly neutral, but when talking about the outside, the extreme out layer and the extreme in layer, they're gonna have a positive charge and a negative charge that overall will balance to be neutral. So that is absolutely not correct. That leads us to a letter C. Moving on. Question 7. Cells of Polymatus Atlantic butterfly of the Lycanidae family have 446 chromosomes. Which of the following statements about the P. Atlantic butterfly are correct? So a question of genetics? No, a question of basically Meiosis and Mitosis. Okay, so let's take a look at these statements here. Mitosis will produce 2 daughter cells, which each with 223 pairs of chromosomes. Is that correct? So let's remember that mitosis, its main job is to create identical cells. So if it had originally 446 chromosomes, it has to have 446 chromosomes. But what is the catch here? It's telling us that it will create 2 daughter cells, each with 223 pairs of chromosome. So the first statement is correct, because if it's there in pairs, that means that we're going to have an overall of 446 chromosomes. Do you see where I'm coming from? Statement number 2. Meiosis will produce 4 daughter cells, each with 223 chromosomes. Okay, now we're analyzing the meiosis. Guys, mitosis and meiosis are so important for the IMAT. You have no idea. So please, you got to be really sharp on these. The second statement is absolutely correct. It will create 4 daughter cells, each one of them with half of the amount of DNA inside of it. Okay, so when talking about animal cells, the meiosis will take place in reproductive tissues. So we can create the gametes, okay, the spermatozoids and the ovocites. So we're talking about 223 chromosomes. If the word pairs of chromosome would have been there, this option would have been wrong, okay? So 1 and 2 so far are correct. Third option, mitosis will produce 4 daughter cells, each with 446 chromosomes. Is that correct? Almost, guys, almost. If it wasn't for the number 4, it would have been correct. But the mitosis will always produce 2 cells, okay? And these 2 cells can also do mitosis and generate 4 cells. But we're gonna need 2 cycles for that to happen. One mitosis will not produce 4 daughter cells, will only produce 2 at the time, okay? And statement number 4, meiosis will produce 2 daughter cells, each with 223 pairs of chromosomes. So you can see that these 2 options here, they are mistaken by the number, right? So meiosis will produce 4 daughter cells for cycle, okay? Of course, we can split meiosis into 2 steps, step 1 and step 2, but if you take a look at the meiosis itself, each cycle will produce 4 daughter cells, each with 223 chromosomes when talking about this butterfly here, okay? So that leaves us with option 8, okay? 1 and 2, these are the only 2 statements that are correct. Moving on to question number 8. Okay, so number 8, which of the following statements are correct about meiosis? Once again, talking about cell division. Statement number 1, the DNA content of a gamete is half that of a human red blood cells. Okay, so there's a little catch there. Usually you don't see many catches in the IMAT, but when they do give you some traps, they're very explicit, okay? What are we talking about? So yes, the DNA of a gamete will be half of a human regular cells, but not a red blood cell, okay? Because remember, red blood cells do not have nucleus. So the erythrocytes, other name for red blood cells, they're gonna have no nucleus. Why? Because we need a lot of space to carry oxygen. So there will be a lot of hemoglobin there, and if there's no nucleus, there's more space to spread them out the cell. So a maturate red blood cell does not have a nucleus, so that's why you can't compare the number of DNA with the gamete. It makes no sense. So first statement is incorrect. Second one, meiosis require ATP. Guys, almost like everything that goes on in our body requires ATP. It's easier for you to remember things that does not require ATP than things that require ATP. Statement number 3, meiosis only takes place in reproductive tissues. We were just talking about that. So yes, it only takes place in reproductive tissues. 4, in meiosis, a diploid cell divides in such a way so to produce 2 haploid cells. Okay, so haploid cells, they are cells that have half of the DNA material than any other cells, okay? Because the cells of our bodies, they are going to be 2N, so they're going to be diploid, okay? And whenever we have gametes being generated by meiosis, these gametes will be haploids, so just N. But the thing is, the number again, it's not 2, it's going to be 4. So for every cycle of meiosis, we're going to have 4 haploid cells being produced. That's why we cannot consider the last statement here. So that leads us with only option 2 and 3 that correspond to letter D. Moving on, question number 9. Which of the following statements are correct? Okay. First statement, hormones are slower acting than nerves. So it's a comparison, it's a classic thing comparing hormones to the nerve systems, because both of them, what is the main goal of these? Is to generate a response, okay? It's to generate a action in our body. But the thing is, the nerve system will be a lot quicker, okay? In the hormone system, it's going to be a bit more slow because it's going to be produced in one gland. It's going to have to travel through our vessels, and then it's going to have to arrive to the target organ to then generate a response. Okay, you see how that makes sense? So hormones are a lot slower than nerves in general. Second statement, hormones act for a very short time. That's where the hormones, takes the advantage, I would say, or not, if you think about it. Even though that they're a lot slower, they're going to take their time, okay? They're going to keep triggering the cells to do whatever they are planned to to be there for a lot longer time. So think about it, for example, the adrenaline that we were talking about. So whenever you get scared or something like this, your levels of adrenaline or the cortisol will increase, and you will see that because you're gonna feel your heart rate a lot fast. You're gonna feel that you're wide awake, and that's gonna last longer. You can still feel your hand shaking for a long period of time, comparing to, for example, whenever you burn yourself, you're gonna have that arch response of the neurons, right? You put your hand where you shouldn't have put, and then you feel that heat, and then you immediately take out your hand without even thinking about it. And then once that's done, you already have control of your hand again. It's not like it's gonna keep going, backwards forever. No, that's not how it goes. So hormones act for a very long time. Okay, that's the catch. So the second statement is incorrect because it's telling us that it's a short time. Third statement, hormones act more generally than nerves. Okay, so let's think about it. When talking about generally, it's not that they act like more often. It's more talking about like they're more generically, than nerves. And yes, this statement is correct for this reason. Adrenaline, for example, that I told you, it's going to be produced in our adrenals, and it's going to have their response being spread out into different organs. So every single organ that has receptors for these hormones will have a response. So they're going to be more generic, let's put it this way. So wherever it arrives first, it's going to generate a response. But nerves are more specific, their targets. So if they have a landing point, okay, we're going to have like this neuron plate, and our muscles, for example, it's only going to act in that specific spot, okay, and not any other place at all. So the third statement is absolutely correct. Fourth statement, hormones are released when you get scared. Yeah, you guys know that. So let's just count our correct options. The first one are correct. Second one, no. Third one, yes. And fourth one, yes. That leads us with 1, 3, and 4, letter D. Let's go check our last question for the day. Alright guys, so last question of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and let's break this one down. Question number 10. Which of the following statement is true? Letter A, protein synthesis occurs solely in the nucleus. Does that make sense? Is there any protein being synthesized in the nucleus? No, but there's another process very important going on in the nucleus that is kind of related to the protein synthesis. That is what? The transcription. So, but there's no proteins being synthesized. And for that reason, we cannot mark A as correct. Letter B, each amino acid is coded for by 3 RNA bases. Well, that one is interesting. Let's leave it for the last. Letter C, each protein is coded for by 3 amino acids. So there's kind of correlation with the B. Let's leave these both for last. Red blood cells can create new proteins to prolong their lifespan. Okay, so red blood cells can create new proteins. Guys, we spoke about the red blood cells. There's no nucleus there. If there's no nucleus there, there's no transcription. If there's no transcription, there's no translation. If there's no translation, there's no proteins. So it can't be as well. Letter E, protein synthesis isn't necessary for mitosis to take place. Now, is protein synthesis important for the mitosis? Absolutely. It's the whole process of mitosis, separating the chromosomes, everything, it requires proteins. So if there's no proteins, that can't happen. So letter A, D, and E, it's out of the picture. Let's analyze letter B and C. But for that, let's just recap a little bit what have we spoke already. So you guys know the central dogma of biology involves transcription, translation, and protein synthesis. Everything happens from the nucleus to outside of the cytoplasm. So just remember that this transcription will take place in the nucleus. It will be synthesizing a mRNA. That is a RNA messenger, not the app, and it's going to leave the nucleus through the pores, okay? Once it does that, it's going to find a ribosome that is going to be translating this mRNA into a protein. But just remember, there's other characters important here. The tRNA, it's going to be called transport RNA because he's going to be transporting the amino acids. So he's going to be the link between the world of amino acids and the world of nucleotides. That's why this process is called translation. They're translating from one language to another. And the ribosome is going to be the guy that's going to be holding everyone together. It's going to be holding the mRNA, and it's going to be holding the tRNA. So we can have our final product, that is the protein. Now, just remember that the way this takes place is by triplets. So we're going to have groups of 3 nucleotides, okay? And these 3 nucleotides will be translated into a amino acid. Like this one here, for example, AUG will always be translated into a methionine, okay? CCU will always be translated into a glycine. So by these triplets of nucleotides, we're going to have the amino acids. And a group of amino acids will build a oligoprotein, so a protein with small amount of amino acids if it's a small chain, or a polypeptide that is going to be a long chain with a long number of amino acids. So for that reason, letter B is our correct answer. Each amino acid is coded for by 3 RNA bases. So what are the RNA bases? The nucleotides. Letter C cannot be. Each protein is coded for by 3 amino acids. No, the protein has ton loads of amino acids normally, but they can also be built by just a few of them. That's why we're usually going to call them oligopeptides or just peptides. And well, that's it, guys. Last thing I want to mention, actually, I think this is a great opportunity because nowadays it's very hyped. You probably already heard about the peptides, right? And well, the peptides, as we were talking about, is just a few amino acids gathered in a sequence. But they're very hyped because outside of the context of academic, they're being used for different purposes. You might have heard that in a context of gym or aesthetics or any other things, because when they're arranged in a very particular way, they can trigger certain responses from our bodies. And for that, we can have a very specific response of the body when compared, for example, with traditional drugs, that they can be very generic, like the hormones, like we mentioned, right? Whenever they're very generic, we say that they have a systemic response in our bodies, and that can be a little bit of annoying sometimes. So nowadays, people are studying a lot about these peptides. Proof and example of this is the Mounjaro or the Ozempic. There also are peptides that induce this response, lowering the appetite of people. So, well, just a curiosity for you all, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're new. This is gonna help me a lot, and it's gonna motivate me to keep going. Let me know in the comments what other video you would like to see in this channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one.